"You're fired. Consider it my gift to you." The text message burned into my retinas as I stood in my wedding dress, bouquet still in hand. Moments ago, I'd said, "I do," to the love of my life. Now, in the church vestibule, surrounded by floating flower arrangements and the distant chatter of excited guests, I stared at my phone in disbelief. Tate Lawson, my boss's son, the man who'd made my work life miserable for 3 months, had chosen my wedding day, to terminate my employment. I showed the message to Karen, my brand new husband. His reaction surprised me. Instead of outrage, a knowing smile spread across his face. He took my trembling hands, kissed my knuckles, and whispered, "Check your messages later. Today belongs to us." How could he be so calm? I'd just lost my job as lead project manager at the most prestigious architecture firm in the city. The position I'd worked myself to exhaustion for. The career I'd built over 2 dedicated years. But something in Karen's eyes told me to trust him. So I silenced my phone, tucked it into my maid of honor's purse, and walked with my husband through the grand doors of the church, into a shower of rose petals and cheers. 3 hours later, during our first dance, Nima, my maid of honor, rushed over with wide eyes. "Waverly, your phone won't stop buzzing. You have 108 missed calls." I checked the screen. Calls from the office, from coworkers, and 17 from a number I recognized instantly. Gregory Lawson, the company owner himself, Tate's father. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a firing, this was the beginning of something much bigger than I could have imagined. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please take a second to like and subscribe. Many listeners hear these stories but never engage, and that means you might miss future uploads when the algorithm skips you. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, back to my wedding day nightmare. My name is Waverly Abrams, and until that text message, I was the beating heart of Crescent Design Studio. I'm meticulous by nature, the kind of person who color codes her grocery lists and can spot a measurement error in architectural plans from across the room. My colleagues called me the database, because I remembered every client preference, every project detail, every deadline without needing to check notes. My parents were both teachers who valued precision and hard work. When Dad had his stroke during my first year of college, I nearly dropped out to help Mom with medical bills. Instead, I doubled my course load while working nights at a printing shop. I graduated with honors in architectural project management, with minor specializations in computer systems and urban planning. That's how I landed at Crescent 2 years ago. Gregory Lawson, the founder, recognized my unusual combination of architectural knowledge and systems thinking. He hired me to modernize their project management approach. I designed a proprietary system from scratch, one that tracked every blueprint version, client request, budget allocation, and permit application. The system worked brilliantly. Project completion times dropped by 30%. Client satisfaction scores rose. Gregory called me the best investment this company ever made. Then came Tate. At 32, Tate Lawson had bounced between 3 different divisions of his father's company, never finding his footing. He had his father's square jaw and confident stance, but none of his business acumen or people skills. 3 months ago, Gregory announced his semi-retirement and promoted Tate to department director, my direct supervisor. The atmosphere changed instantly. Where Gregory sought my input, Tate excluded me from meetings. Where Gregory praised my innovations publicly, Tate took credit for my ideas. When I scheduled training sessions to document my system for others, Tate canceled them as unnecessary expenses. I met Karen during this time, when I was submitting plans for Crescent's biggest project ever, a downtown revitalization worth millions. He worked at the city's permit office, the calm, thoughtful man behind the counter who actually took time to review submissions thoroughly instead of just rubber stamping them. We connected over blueprint discussions, then coffee breaks, then dinner dates. Karen became my sanctuary from the increasingly hostile work environment. What I didn't know then was that he was noticing concerning patterns in the submissions from Crescent, specifically the ones Tate had handled personally. 2 months into our relationship, Karen proposed. We planned a small wedding on short notice, partly because we were both practical people who didn't need extravagance, and partly because I sensed my position at Crescent was becoming precarious. Tate had been making comments about restructuring and streamlining. I never imagined he'd actually fire me on my wedding day. As the reception continued around me, I excused myself to the bridal suite and listened to Gregory's voicemail. "Waverly, this is Gregory. Call me immediately. Tate had no authority to terminate you. There's been a terrible mistake. We need you. The downtown project submission deadline is Monday, and no one can access your system." 6 more messages followed, each more desperate than the last. In the final one, Gregory's voice had lost its usual confidence. "Waverly, please. The Westside development team is threatening to walk. No one can find the updated renderings. The password Tate thought would work doesn't. We're at a standstill." I sat on the edge of a velvet settee, my wedding dress pooling around me, and felt something unexpected. Power. For 2 years, I'd built a system so intuitive for me that I navigated it without thought, but so complex that no one else could use it without proper training that Tate had repeatedly prevented. I was the only person alive who fully understood every function, every shortcut, every failsafe I'd built in. And now, on what should have been the worst professional day of my life, I held every card. Karen found me there, staring at my phone. He sat beside me, careful not to wrinkle my dress. "I should tell you something," he said quietly. "The plans Tate has been submitting to my department, he's been altering them after the engineering team signs off, removing safety features, substituting cheaper materials, things that would never pass proper inspection." My blood ran cold. "That's not just unethical, it's dangerous." Karen nodded. "I've been documenting everything. I was going to report it next week, but now." I understood then why he'd smiled at the firing text. This wasn't a setback. It was an opportunity, one that removed me from legal liability while simultaneously leaving the company helpless without me. "What should we do?" I asked. Karen smiled. "Nothing. Not today. Today, we dance. Tomorrow, we fly to Belize for our honeymoon. And when we return," he kissed my forehead, "we'll reshape the entire landscape." We returned to the reception, and I danced like a woman without a care in the world. By midnight, I had 212 missed calls. Throughout our honeymoon week, the calls continued. I sent them all to voicemail. Gregory's messages evolved from urgent to desperate to practically begging. On our 3rd day in Belize, while Karen and I were sipping fresh coconut water on the beach, Gregory offered to triple my salary if I'd come back. I deleted the message without responding. 2 days later, he offered partial ownership in the firm. Again, I didn't respond. Karen watched me decline these incredible offers without comment. He understood something fundamental about me. This had never been about money. It was about respect. "You know," he said as we watched the sunset on our final evening in Belize, "there's a vacancy in the consulting team for the city planning department. They need someone who understands architectural submissions from both sides, someone who could create guidelines for proper protocols." I turned to him, intrigued. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you start your own consulting firm, with the city as your first client. They'd pay for your expertise in creating systems that catch exactly the kind of corner-cutting Tate was doing." The idea took root instantly. By the time our plane landed back home, I'd drafted a business plan on my tablet. 3 days later, I registered Precision Protocol Consulting. My phone rang within minutes of the business registration going public. Gregory Lawson. For the first time in 2 weeks, I answered. "Waverly, thank God, we're in crisis. The downtown project is stalled. Clients are walking. Please, name your price." "I'm sorry to hear that, Gregory," I said calmly, "but I'm no longer available for employment. I've started my own consulting firm." "We'll hire your firm then. Whatever you're charging, we'll pay it." I let the silence stretch between us. "My first client is the city planning department, Gregory. I'm designing new verification protocols for building submissions." The sharp intake of breath told me he understood the implications. If I was working with the city to create better verification systems, I would inevitably discover Tate's dangerous alterations, if Karen hadn't already reported them. Waverly, please. Tate made a terrible mistake. He was jealous of your relationship with me, of your competence. Let me fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Gregory. Some bridges, once burned, stay ash. I ended the call and turned to Karen, who had been listening nearby. Is it wrong that felt so good? He shook his head. It's not wrong to stand up for yourself, or for public safety. The following week, I began my contract with the city. With my insider knowledge of how firms like Crescent operated, I quickly identified vulnerabilities in the current verification system. I created new protocols that would catch unauthorized changes to approved plans, especially structural modifications made without engineering review. As part of the process, the city conducted an audit of recent submissions. Predictably, they found numerous violations in Crescent's downtown project plans, specifically in submissions handled by Tate. Load-bearing walls thinned, foundation specifications altered, safety features removed to cut costs. The investigation was swift and damning. The downtown project was permanently halted and reassigned to a competing firm. Tate wasn't just fired, he was blacklisted throughout the industry. His professional license was suspended pending review. Crescent Design Studio lost millions. Their reputation, built over 30 years, crumbled in 30 days. Through industry contacts, I heard that Gregory had suffered a minor heart attack from the stress. Despite everything, that news brought me no pleasure. Gregory had been a good mentor before his blind spot for his son clouded his judgment. My consulting business thrived. Within 6 months, I had contracts with 3 municipal governments and was hiring staff to keep up with demand. Karen received a promotion at the permit office for his ethical stand. We bought our first home, a fixer-upper with good bones and incredible potential, just like our life together. Then, 1 year to the day after my wedding, a thick cream envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten letter from Gregory Lawson. Dear Waverly, it began. Some debts can never be fully repaid, but acknowledgement is the beginning of atonement. I've spent this year rebuilding what my son and my own negligence destroyed. Tate has completed a professional ethics program and works now in a junior position under strict supervision. He understands the gravity of his actions. Crescent has new leadership and new protocols. We've rehauled every system and every submission process. We are a different company now. I'm writing to ask if you would consider meeting with me. Not to return, I understand that bridge is indeed ash, but to consult on our new systems, to ensure we never fail the public trust again. Whether you accept or decline, please know my respect for you has only grown. You were right to stand your ground, right to protect the public, right to demand better. With sincere regret and admiration, Gregory Lawson. I showed the letter to Karen that evening. What do you think? Should I meet with him? Karen considered it carefully. What would be your purpose in going? Closure? Vindication? Professional curiosity? I pondered his question. All of those, I suppose. And maybe to see if genuine change is possible. Then I think you have your answer. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. When my assistant told me Gregory had requested the meeting take place at Crescent's offices rather than mine, I almost canceled. Returning to that building felt like stepping backward, but curiosity won out. When I arrived, the receptionist, a new face I didn't recognize, greeted me with unusual deference. Miss Abrams, Mr. Lawson is waiting in the main conference room. As I walked through the hallways, I noticed significant changes. New faces, new energy, new systems visible on screens. As I passed workstations, they'd truly started over. The conference room door was open. I stepped in to find not just Gregory but Tate as well, sitting stiffly beside his father. Gregory stood to greet me, but Tate remained seated, eyes fixed on the table. Waverly, thank you for coming. Gregory's handshake was firm, but his face looked aged beyond the single year that had passed. Stress had carved new lines around his eyes. I took a seat across from them. Your letter was unexpected. As was the education of this past year, Gregory replied, but necessary. He glanced at his son. Tate has something to say to you. Tate finally looked up. The arrogant gleam I remembered had vanished from his eyes, replaced by something unfamiliar, humility. or at least its closest approximation. I owe you an apology, he said, voice barely above a whisper. What I did was unprofessional, vindictive, and potentially dangerous to the public. There's no excuse for my behavior. His words sounded rehearsed, but the shame coloring his face appeared genuine. Still, an apology couldn't erase the past. Apology noted, I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting it outright. Gregory cleared his throat. There's more. He slid a folder across the table. This company has been rebuilt from its foundation. New safety protocols, new review processes, new leadership structure. Tate is no longer in management. He's relearning the business properly this time, from the ground up. I opened the folder. Inside was a detailed overview of their new systems, impressively thorough, I had to admit, along with a consultant contract offering a substantial fee for my review and recommendations. We're not asking you to come back, Gregory clarified, just to evaluate our new approach, to ensure we've truly changed. As I scanned the documents, Tate stood suddenly. There's something else. His voice cracked slightly. He left the room, returning moments later with a smaller envelope, which he placed before me with shaking hands. Inside was a check, for exactly the amount of my entire wedding, down to the penny for the last flower arrangement. How did you know this figure? I asked, suspicious. Your wedding planner is my cousin's best friend, Gregory admitted. I asked for the total. I wanted it to be precise. Tate spoke again, this time more steadily. Consider it our gift to you, the one I claimed to be giving when I had no right. A flash of anger surged through me. Did they really think money could fix this? That they could buy their way back to ethical standing? Before I could respond, Tate placed a small USB drive beside the check. This also belongs to you. It's the entire project management system you created, with all the passwords and access points. We've managed to recreate basic functionality, but it's never worked properly without you. It's yours to take or delete. I stared at the tiny drive, feeling the weight of 2 years' work condensed into something I could hold between 2 fingers. The system I'd built with such care that had been used as a weapon against me when Tate prevented others from learning it. In that moment, looking at these 2 men, one broken by his own ethical failings, the other humbled by the consequences of his arrogance, I realized something profound about revenge. Sometimes it arrives without you having to deliver it yourself. Sometimes the greatest vengeance is simply surviving, thriving, and watching others reckon with the mess they've made. I closed the folder and stood up. I'll review your proposals and get back to you within the week. My fee will be triple your initial offer, paid in advance. My team will need complete access and full transparency. Gregory nodded immediately. Agreed. And one more condition. I looked directly at Tate. You personally will complete every single training module I assign, no matter how basic or time-consuming. You'll learn every aspect of proper project management, ethical submission practices, and regulatory compliance. You'll become the company's foremost expert on doing things the right way. Color drained from Tate's face, but he nodded. Yes, I understand. Then we might have something to discuss. I gathered my belongings and walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. Oh, and Gregory? The check is unnecessary. Seeing your son learn the value of integrity will be gift enough. I left them sitting there, the check untouched on the table, and walked out of Crescent Design Studio with my head high. But this isn't where my story ends. It's where the real transformation began. That evening, as Karen and I discussed the meeting over dinner, my phone pinged with a news alert. Crescent's competitor, the firm that had taken over the downtown revitalization project, was under investigation for bribery. They had allegedly paid off officials to fast-track approvals despite serious design flaws. Did you know about this? I asked Karen. He shook his head. The investigation just opened today. It's being handled by the state, not the city. I stared at my phone, mind racing. If Crescent's competitor fell, the downtown project would be in limbo again. Millions in development funds would sit idle, workers would lose jobs, and the community revitalization everyone had been promising for years would stall once more. Maybe this is why Gregory reached out now, Karen suggested. He must have known this was coming. He's positioning Crescent to retake the project. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. I wasn't being offered a consulting job out of respect or regret. I was being courted because Gregory needed my systems and expertise to seize an opportunity when his competitor failed. I felt used all over again. "What are you going to do?" Karen asked, seeing the storm gathering in my expression. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. "I'm going to sleep on it. This requires careful thought." But sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the meeting in my mind. Was Tate's contrition genuine, or just another performance? Was Gregory truly committed to ethical reform, or simply desperate to salvage his legacy? And most importantly, what did I want my role to be in whatever happened next? By morning, I had my answer. I called Gregory at 7 a.m. "I've reconsidered your offer," I told him. "I'm not interested in consulting for Crescent." The disappointment in his silence was palpable. "I understand," he finally said. "However," I continued, "I am interested in something else. A partnership." "A partnership?" His voice lifted with surprise. "My company oversees all project management and regulatory compliance. Crescent handles design and construction. We operate as separate entities but present as partners to clients. This way, I maintain my independence while ensuring ethical standards are met." "That's highly unusual," Gregory said slowly. "So is firing someone on their wedding day?" I countered. "I'm not interested in returning to a company where I could be undermined again, but I am interested in seeing that downtown project completed properly. The community deserves that." There was a long pause. "What about Tate? Where does he fit in this arrangement?" "Tate works for you, not me. But any project he touches goes through triple verification by my team. No exceptions." Another pause. "I'll need to discuss this with my board." "You have 24 hours, I replied. "After that, I'll be presenting my own proposal to the city for the downtown project." I ended the call feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, complete ownership of my future. No longer was I reacting to what had been done to me. I was creating something new, on my terms. 23 hours later, Gregory called back. "The board has approved your proposal, with one addition. They want a 3-year minimum commitment. 2 years, with an option to extend based on performance metrics that we both agree to in advance." I countered. "Done." And just like that, Precision Protocol Consulting had its biggest client yet. When the competitor firm was officially removed from the downtown project 2 weeks later, our newly formed partnership was ready with updated plans, enhanced safety features, and a comprehensive management system that combined the best of my original design with new security protocols. The city awarded us the contract, partly due to our innovative partnership structure that promised both creative design and rigorous compliance verification. The press called it a new model for architectural accountability. Tate was assigned as Junior Project Coordinator, a position 5 levels below his previous role. Every morning, he received a detailed training module from my team. Every evening, he was tested on the material. If he failed, he repeated the module the next day. To my surprise, he never complained. He completed each assignment meticulously, asked thoughtful questions, and gradually began to show genuine understanding of why protocols existed. 3 months into our partnership, I arrived early at the construction site for an inspection and found Tate already there, methodically checking concrete pour specifications against the approved plans. "You don't have to personally verify this," I told him. "That's what the site engineers are for." He straightened up, clipboard in hand. "I know, but I need to understand every aspect from the ground up. That's the only way I'll truly learn." I studied him, searching for signs of the arrogant young man who'd fired me by text. Instead, I saw someone different, someone chastened by failure and genuinely striving to rebuild himself. "Why did you do it?" I asked suddenly. "Why fire me on my wedding day specifically?" Tate flinched but held my gaze. "Because I knew you were right. About everything. The training programs, the safety concerns, the need for better documentation. And I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand that you'd built something so essential that even my father respected you more than me." So you tried to hurt me at my most vulnerable moment. He nodded, shame evident in his posture. I thought I'd feel powerful. Instead, I watched everything collapse. The system nobody could navigate. The projects nobody could track. My father's face when he realized what I'd done. He swallowed hard. I destroyed in one moment what might have been the best mentorship I could have had. His words hung in the morning air between us, unexpectedly genuine. You can't undo the past, I said finally. But you're right about one thing. I would have been a good mentor. I still could be, if you earn it. Hope flickered across his face. How? By becoming the kind of professional who puts safety and integrity above ego. By learning every aspect of this business properly. By admitting when you don't know something instead of hiding it. I can do that, he said with quiet determination. I will do that. I nodded. Then let's start with these poor specifications. Show me what you've found. For the next hour, I walked him through proper verification procedures, explaining rationales rather than just rules. He absorbed everything with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that revealed a mind capable of much more than I'd given him credit for. As we finished and others began arriving for the day's work, Tate hesitated, then asked, "Do you think you'll ever truly forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't something you're owed. It's something that might develop over time, through consistent actions rather than apologies. Show me who you're becoming, not who you regret being. He nodded, accepting the challenge without protest. Over the following months, the downtown project progressed ahead of schedule. Our partnership model received national attention, with other municipalities expressing interest in similar arrangements. My consulting firm expanded to 15 employees, while Crescent gradually rebuilt its reputation under the new structure. Gregory, true to his word, kept Tate on a strict learning path. The young man who had once sabotaged training sessions now organized them himself, ensuring every team member understood both the how and why of proper procedures. 6 months into the project, I received an unexpected visit at my office from Raina, my former assistant at Crescent. She'd stayed when I left, and now worked directly with Gregory. He wants to promote Tate, she told me without preamble, to assistant project manager. I raised an eyebrow. And he sent you to test my reaction? She smiled. He sent me to get your honest assessment. Tate has completed all the training modules with perfect scores. His site reports are exemplary. The team actually respects him now. And what do you think? I asked. Raina had always been perceptive about people. I think he's genuinely changed. And I think having responsibility might solidify that change. I leaned back in my chair, considering. Tell Gregory I'll support the promotion with one condition. Tate needs to handle the upcoming community presentation. Alone. Let's see how he does when representing the project to the people it actually affects. The community presentation was scheduled for the following week, a critical milestone where we would update neighborhood residents on construction progress, timeline, and how their input had shaped design modifications. It was a high-pressure situation, with potentially hostile questions from residents who'd seen previous promises broken. I attended incognito, sitting in the back row of the community center. Tate arrived early, setting up displays and greeting people personally as they entered. When he stepped to the podium, I noticed something surprising. He was nervous. The old Tate would have covered insecurity with arrogance. This version acknowledged it directly. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tate Lawson, Assistant Project Coordinator. Some of you may remember when this project stalled last year. That failure was partly due to my mistakes. Shortcuts. I tried to take that compromised safety and violated your trust. A murmur ran through the crowd. This level of candor was unexpected. I'm here today not just to update you on our progress, but to assure you that every aspect of this project now undergoes triple verification. Our partnership with Precision Protocol Consulting means nothing reaches construction without rigorous safety and compliance review. He proceeded to walk through the updated plans, highlighting areas where community feedback had directly influenced design changes. When tough questions came, he answered honestly, including several times when he said, "I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you personally." By the end, the initial skepticism had transformed into cautious optimism. Residents approached him afterward with follow-up questions, which he addressed with patience and transparency. I slipped out before he could spot me, but I'd seen enough. The next day, I called Gregory. "I heard Tate did well yesterday," he said immediately. "He did. I was there." "And your verdict?" I paused, knowing my next words would significantly impact Tate's future. "I support the promotion. He's earned it." Gregory's relief was audible. "Thank you, Waverly. Your endorsement means everything. Just remember, trust is rebuilt in small moments of integrity, repeated consistently over time. One good presentation doesn't erase the past." "I understand. We all do." After hanging up, I stood at my office window, looking out at the downtown skyline where our project was gradually taking shape. Cranes swung against the blue sky, workers moved purposefully across the site, and the community had begun to believe again in the promise of revitalization. This wasn't the revenge I'd initially imagined when I returned from my honeymoon to 212 missed calls. It was something more complex, more nuanced, a reconstruction rather than a destruction. I hadn't ruined Tate or Gregory. I'd helped create a framework where they could become better versions of themselves, while securing my own position of strength. And in doing so, I'd built something far more valuable than a system only I could understand. I'd built a model of accountability that might actually last beyond any single project or person. That evening, as Karen and I walked past the construction site on our way to dinner, we paused to watch the sunset glint off the partially completed structures. "Are you happy with how things turned out?" he asked, squeezing my hand. I considered the question carefully. "I'm satisfied, not because they suffered, but because actual change happened. The company is safer, the buildings are sounder, the community will benefit." "And Tate?" "Tate is." I searched for the right word. "Tate is becoming someone his position deserves. Whether that redemption continues is up to him." Karen nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I showed you that text message on our wedding day, I never imagined this outcome. I thought you'd want scorched earth." "Maybe I would have, if you hadn't shown me another way." I leaned against his shoulder. "You taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, but on your terms, not theirs." He kissed the top of my head. "Speaking of reconstruction, the house renovations are finally done. Should we have Gregory and Tate over for dinner to celebrate?" I laughed at the suggestion. "Let's not push it. Professional respect is one thing. Friendship is quite another." "Fair enough," he conceded with a smile. "One step at a time." One step at a time. That had become my mantra through this entire journey. From the moment I received that text on my wedding day to the partnership that rose from the ashes of my firing, each step had led me not just to survival, but to genuine triumph. The downtown project would be completed under budget and ahead of schedule. My consulting firm would continue to grow, and I would forever be known as the woman who turned a wedding day firing into an industry-changing business model. As Karen and I continued our evening walk, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Tate. "Thank you for your support on the promotion. I won't let you down." I showed it to Karen, who raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to respond?" I thought for a moment, then typed, "Make sure you don't. Some gifts can't be returned." As I hit send, I realized the text had arrived exactly 1 year to the day after his gift to me on my wedding day. The symmetry wasn't lost on me, nor, I suspected, on him. Some might say I should have crushed Tate completely when I had the chance, that I should have taken Gregory's company apart piece by piece instead of helping rebuild it, that my revenge wasn't vengeful enough. But those people would be missing the point. True power isn't about destruction. It's about having the ability to destroy and choosing a different path. It's about reshaping reality according to your vision, not just reacting to someone else's cruelty. In the end, I didn't just get even. I got ahead, and I did it not by stooping to Tate's level, but by rising so far above it that he would spend years climbing to reach where I now stood. If you've stayed with me through this story, you might be wondering if you could show the same restraint in my position. Could you turn betrayal into opportunity? Could you transform revenge into reformation? It's not an easy path, but sometimes the most satisfying victories aren't about what you destroy, but what you build from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever turned a professional betrayal into an unexpected triumph? I'd love to hear how you transformed your own setbacks into stepping stones. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss my next story about navigating the complicated landscape of career, relationships, and the sweet satisfaction of success on your own terms. "You'll take the stairs," Vernon said, tapping his polished watch. The morning staff meeting had just ended, and I stood alone with him and 4 other team leaders near the elevator bank. Elevator access is restricted during the CEO summit. Security protocol. My arms were full of presentation boards for the executive lunch. The same lunch I'd spent 3 nights preparing but wouldn't be attending. "The materials need to be on 65 in 15 minutes, I replied, glancing at the elevator where the others waited. Vernon's thin lips curved upward. "Then I suggest you start climbing, Rook. Not Rookie. Not my actual name, Rookmini. Just Rook, like the chess piece. Expendable. Limited in movement." "I've got 30 pounds of presentation materials," I said. He shrugged. "Should have thought about that before spending company money on foam boards instead of doing digital presentations like everyone else." The boards were his explicit request. I had the email to prove it. "Maybe one of us could help carry," Lena started, but Vernon cut her off. "Everyone's needed at the summit. Rook can handle it." He turned to me. "Consider it exercise. You need to fill the gap while we attend the executive lunch." Damon snickered. Eden and Parker exchanged glances. Lena studied her shoes. The steel elevator doors parted. They stepped inside. 65 floors, Vernon called as the doors closed. "Better hurry." I stood frozen, clutching the presentation boards, hearing something crack inside me. Not my resolve. Something else. Something that had been bending for 5 years. The stairwell door felt impossibly heavy. Inside, concrete steps spiraled upward, emergency lights casting everything in sickly yellow. I set down the boards and pulled out my phone. "Artie, it's happening," I said to my lawyer. "Make the call." "Are you certain?" His voice echoed in the empty stairwell. "Once we move, there's no—" "I'm certain. Execute as planned." I tucked my phone away, picked up the boards, and began climbing. By the 3rd floor, my calves burned. By the 7th, my breathing grew labored. At floor 12, I set everything down and peeled off my jacket. 23 minutes later, I pushed through the door to floor 30. Halfway there, sweat plastered my blouse to my back. My fingers were raw from gripping the boards. I remembered my first day at Zencor Technologies 5 years ago. Fresh from college, portfolio bulging with ideas, heart full of ambition. "Your designs have potential," Vernon had said during my interview. "Rough, unpolished, but we can work with that." For 3 years, I'd worked overtime, weekends, holidays, designs that won company awards, with Vernon's name attached. Campaigns that doubled client retention, credit given to Damon or Eden. My ideas, voiced in meetings, ignored until repeated by Parker, minutes later. Floor 42. My legs trembled. The maintenance manager passed me, concern etching his weathered face. "Rukmini, why are you in the stairwell? There's a fire safety inspection scheduled." Following orders, I managed between breaths. He shook his head. "Let me help you with those." "I've got it, Hector. But thank you. Suit yourself. But you shouldn't be here today of all days." If only he knew I'd signed his paycheck since Tuesday. Floor 57. My phone buzzed. "Artie, it's done," he said. "Documents delivered. The board is reviewing them now." I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Any pushback? None. Property transfer appear legitimate because it is, and they're stunned, of course. 8 more floors. I forced myself upward, each step a testament to 5 years of swallowed pride, of team dinners where I drank water while they ordered bottles of wine, of watching colleagues who spoke up disappear overnight. 5 years of living in a studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old car while funneling every dollar of my inheritance into anonymous shell companies that slowly, methodically purchased shares of the building that housed Zencor Technologies. Floor 65. I pushed through the final door. Presentation boards clutched against my chest. The receptionist jumped to her feet. "You can't go in there," she stammered. "The board is in emergency session." Through the glass walls, I saw them. Vernon, Damon, Eden, Parker, Lena, seated around the conference table with the executive team. The CEO stood at the head, holding papers, his face ashen. I walked past the receptionist, through the double doors, into stunned silence. "What are you doing here?" Vernon hissed. "I told you to take the stairs," I finished, setting down the boards. "So I did. 65 floors. The CEO cleared his throat. "Miss Kapoor, perhaps you could wait outside. We're dealing with an urgent matter." "The building sale," I said, "and the eviction notice." Vernon's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" I stepped forward, extending my hand to the CEO. "The papers, please." Confusion flickered across his face, but he handed them over. I scanned the document, the eviction notice I'd instructed Artie to deliver that morning. 5 years of planning, of saving, of secretly acquiring the building through a dozen different investment vehicles, all culminating in this moment. I looked up at their bewildered faces. "The elevator wasn't restricted today," I said. "I checked with maintenance on my way up." Vernon's face reddened. "This is inappropriate. Get out before I call security." "That would be interesting," I replied, "since they work for me now." The room went still. I set the eviction notice on the table, smoothing its corners. 2 years ago, I suggested we buy this building instead of renting. You said I should stick to arranging lunch orders and leave real business to the adults. I turned to the CEO. "You asked who purchased the building. The answer is Kapoor Holdings." I paused. "My company." Vernon laughed, a brittle sound. "That's impossible. You can barely afford your bus pass. You assumed that because I let you. The modest clothes, the packed lunches, the ancient car, all carefully cultivated. Meanwhile, my inheritance was working for me, buying this building piece by piece while you were buying designer watches. If you're listening to this story and feeling that rush of satisfaction, that tingle of finally justice is coming, take a second to tap that like button. Follow this channel for more stories of long-awaited reckonings. I promise, what happens next will leave you speechless. Drop a comment with what you think Vernon deserves. I'm Rukmini Kapoor, first-generation American, daughter of immigrants who taught me patience and perseverance, graduate of state college, not an Ivy League, always the hardest worker in the room, never the most recognized. For 5 years, I watched Vernon and his inner circle take credit for my work. My redesign of the client portal, presented as Damon's brainchild, my marketing strategy that increased revenue by 40%, suddenly, Eden's brilliant insight. My suggestions in meetings, dismissed, until Parker repeated them minutes later. "This is absurd," Vernon spluttered. "She's delusional." The CEO held up a hand. "The paperwork appears legitimate. Copper Holdings completed the purchase yesterday." Vernon's face drained of color. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said. "The building is mine, and Zencor Technologies has 30 days to vacate." Lena stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "Rukmini, can we talk about this? Maybe reach an understanding?" Lena, who had watched in silence for 5 years, who knew what was happening but never intervened, who once whispered, "I'm sorry," after a particularly brutal meeting but did nothing to help. "You have 30 days, I repeated. "I suggest you start packing." The CEO cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could negotiate a lease. The space has already been promised to new tenants." A lie, but they didn't know that. Vernon surged to his feet. "You ungrateful little—" "Choose your next words carefully," I interrupted. "They might be the last you speak as an employee of Zencor." The room erupted in voices, protests, questions, threats. I remained standing, silent, watching their comfortable world crumble around them. Security arrived, the same team that now reported to me. The CEO raised his hands, calling for calm. "Everyone, please. Let's take a breath." He turned to me. "Miss Kapoor, surely we can come to some arrangement. Zencor has been in this building for 15 years. 14 years and 7 months, I corrected. "I've documented every day." Vernon's eyes burned with hatred. "You planned this. All this time, pretending to be a team player." "I was a team player. You just didn't value my team." I walked to the window, looking out over the city. "Do you know what it's like, Vernon, to have your work stolen day after day, to watch others advance on your ideas while you stay behind? That's business," he spat. "If you can't handle it, I handled it perfectly," I said, turning back to face them. "I played the long game while you focused on quarterly bonuses." The CEO stepped between us. "What do you want, Miss Kapoor?" What did I want? Revenge, yes. But something else too. Something that had been forming in my mind as I climbed those 65 floors, step by painful step. The conference room doors burst open. A security guard entered, his expression grim. "Miss Kapoor, there's a situation downstairs. The fire safety inspector found critical violations. He's threatening to shut down the building immediately." Vernon smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Not even owner for a day and already failing. I felt the weight of all eyes on me. This wasn't part of the plan. The building inspection wasn't supposed to happen until next week. Had I miscalculated? Would my moment of triumph collapse before it had truly begun? The CEO looked at me with newfound doubt. Vernon's smile widened. The others exchanged glances, sensing a shift in power. The inspector insists on speaking with the building owner immediately, the guard continued. He says it's urgent. I straightened my sweat-soaked blouse, acutely aware of my disheveled appearance after climbing 65 floors. Against their polished exteriors, I looked exactly as they'd always seen me, struggling, inadequate, out of place. "Tell him I'll be right down," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. As I moved toward the door, Vernon stepped into my path. "Looks like your little power play just crashed and burned," he whispered. "Amateur." I met his gaze. "We'll see who's still standing when this is over." The security guard held the door as I walked out, leaving behind a room of executives wondering if they'd witnessed my greatest triumph or most spectacular failure. And I wondered the same thing myself. The elevator ride down felt like descending into uncertainty. Just minutes ago, I'd revealed myself as the new owner, watching shock ripple across faces that had dismissed me for years. Now, one unexpected inspection threatened everything. Hector waited in the lobby with a man in a navy uniform holding a clipboard. "Miss Kapoor," Hector said, relief evident in his voice. "This is Inspector Neil. He's found several issues during today's fire safety check." Neil frowned, tapping his clipboard. "The sprinkler system on floors 30 through 42 isn't up to code, and 3 emergency exits are blocked with storage items. I can't allow normal operations until these are addressed." My heart sank. The building's previous management company had assured me all systems were compliant. Another lie. "How quickly can we resolve this?" I asked. "The blocked exits can be cleared immediately. The sprinkler system will take at least 3 days of work." 3 days. 3 days of business disruption just as I was establishing authority. "We can't shut down," I said. "There are 12 companies operating in this building." Neil's expression hardened. "Then I suggest you start evacuation procedures." The elevator dinged behind me. Vernon and the CEO emerged, both wearing carefully constructed expressions of concern that didn't quite hide their satisfaction at my predicament. "Problem?" Vernon asked innocently. I turned to Hector. "Get a crew to clear those exits immediately. Then call Ajax Fire Systems. Tell them we need emergency service, whatever the cost." Hector nodded and hurried away. "Inspector," I said, "if we clear the exits and post fire wardens on the affected floors until repairs begin tomorrow morning, would that satisfy immediate safety requirements?" Neil considered this. "I'd need to see the exits cleared personally, and you'd need 1 warden per floor, with hourly fire watch rounds documented." "Done," I said. Vernon stepped forward. "This seems like an extensive building management issue. Perhaps Zencor should reconsider its eviction given these circumstances." The CEO nodded. "We could delay our departure, help manage this transition, for a reasonable accommodation on rent, of course." Their transparent attempt to leverage my crisis made something harden inside me. 5 years of watching them take advantage of every weakness, every vulnerability. "Not this time. Your offer is noted," I replied coolly. "Inspector Neil, please give me 30 minutes to arrange the fire wardens and begin clearing the exits." As Neil stepped away to make a call, Vernon moved closer. "Buying a building doesn't make you capable of running it," he murmured. "You're already failing. Imagine how this looks to your new tenants." I met his gaze. "I climbed 65 floors today because you thought it would break me. What makes you think this will?" "I climbed." His smile never reached his eyes. "Because climbing stairs just requires stubborn stupidity. This requires actual business acumen." The CEO cleared his throat. "We're simply offering assistance during a difficult transition." While attempting to negotiate under duress, I replied, "Not exactly the ethical leadership Zencor claims in its mission statement." Before either could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Artie. "Don't panic. I'm 5 minutes away with help." Hope flickered. Artie had never let me down. I turned back to Inspector Neil. "I need to coordinate the fire wardens. Excuse me." For the next 20 minutes, I moved through the building with purpose, instructing security to clear the blocked exits, contacting office managers on the affected floors. My clothes still clung to me with sweat from the 65-floor climb, but I projected calm authority. When Artie arrived, he wasn't alone. With him was a woman in a tailored suit, carrying a tablet. "Rukmini, this is Tara Mendez, Former fire marshal, now private safety consultant. Tara nodded briskly. Artie explained the situation. Let me see the inspection report. After reviewing Neil's findings, she tapped rapidly on her tablet. These issues are real, but there's an alternative compliance pathway under City Code 5.7b that allows for a 72-hour remediation period with enhanced monitoring. I've worked with Neil before. Let me talk to him. 20 minutes later, we had a solution. The exits were being cleared, fire wardens assigned, and Ajax Fire Systems would begin work at 6 a.m. tomorrow. The building could remain operational. Neil signed off on the revised compliance plan. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon to check progress. As he left, I turned to find Vernon watching from across the lobby. His expression unreadable. Looks like you found a temporary band-aid, he said. But running a building is different from making pretty presentations. This is just the beginning of your problems. Perhaps, I agreed, but I've always been good at solving problems, especially those created by others. His eyes narrowed. The board meeting resumes in 30 minutes. Your little stunt interrupted important business. My ownership of this building is not a stunt. We'll see. He checked his watch. 30 minutes. Unless you need more time to clean up. You look disheveled. After he walked away, Artie touched my arm. You okay? I nodded. I need to change before I go back up there. You have clothes here? Emergency bag in my desk. I've learned to be prepared. 10 minutes later, I emerged from the bathroom in fresh clothes, my hair smoothed back, face washed, the climb's evidence erased, except for the ache in my muscles. Artie waited outside. You don't have to go back up there today. We've made our point. If I don't return, they'll see it as weakness, I said. Besides, there's more to do. The revenge part, he said quietly. I gave him a sharp look. The business part. Rukmini, I've known you since college. This isn't just business. It started as business, I corrected. An investment opportunity they were too arrogant to see. And now? I thought about Vernon's smug face when he ordered me to climb 65 floors. About 5 years of stolen ideas and credit given to others. About watching qualified people pushed out because they challenged the comfortable hierarchy. Now it's justice. When I re-entered the conference room on floor 65, conversations halted. The executive team had reassembled, papers spread across the table. Vernon sat at the CEO's right hand, whispering something that made the older man frown. Miss Kapoor, the CEO said formally, I understand you've resolved the inspection issue. For now, Vernon added. I took the empty chair at the far end of the table. Yes, work begins tomorrow morning. Good, the CEO said. Now, regarding our situation, our legal team has reviewed the ownership documents. The transfer appears legitimate. It is legitimate, I stated. Nevertheless, we believe there's room for negotiation. Zenkor has been the anchor tenant in this building for nearly 15 years. Our sudden eviction would cause significant disruption. I looked around the table at the faces watching me. Some curious, some hostile, some calculating. For 5 years, I'd sat in meetings like this, offering ideas that were ignored or stolen. Today, they waited for my response. Significant disruption, I repeated. Like being told to climb 65 floors with presentation materials because the elevator is restricted when it isn't. Vernon stiffened. The CEO looked confused. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said. Ask your team leaders, I suggested. Ask them how they treat those beneath them in the hierarchy. Eden shifted uncomfortably. Parker studied his hands. Damon's jaw tightened. Miss Kapoor, the CEO continued. Whatever personal grievances you may have, this isn't personal, I interrupted. It's structural. The way Zenkor operates, taking credit from those below, promoting based on relationships rather than results, creating a culture of fear rather than innovation, these are business problems that have created business consequences. And those consequences include you buying our building to evict us? The CEO's voice hardened. That seems rather personal. I bought this building because it was undervalued. The previous owners neglected necessary updates, leading to today's inspection issues. They were willing to sell at below market rate to avoid the coming maintenance costs. I leaned forward. I saw value where others saw only problems. Isn't that what good business people do? Vernon snorted. You saw an opportunity for revenge. Vernon, the CEO warned. No, let's be honest here, Vernon continued. She's been planning this for years. Waiting, watching, looking for weakness. That's not business. That's obsession. I smiled. If recognizing an undervalued asset and having the patience to acquire it properly is obsession, then yes, I'm guilty. The CEO sighed. Regardless of motivation, we're here now. What would it take for Zencor to remain in the building? This was the moment I'd rehearsed countless times in my mind during those 5 years. The moment of leverage, of power. What did I want? Revenge, certainly, but something else too. I'm willing to offer Zencor a new lease agreement, I said. Hope flickered across their faces. With conditions, I added. The CEO nodded cautiously. Which are? First, a complete reorganization of leadership. I looked directly at Vernon. Some people will need to leave. Vernon's face flushed. This is outrageous. Second, a review of all promotions and project attributions for the past 5 years, with appropriate corrections and compensations. Eden paled. Damon's knuckles whitened around his pen. Third, implementation of new policies that protect intellectual property and ensure proper credit. The CEO frowned. You're asking for unprecedented influence over our internal operations. I'm offering conditions for a new lease. You're free to relocate. In 30 days? Impossible. We'd lose millions. I shrugged. Business involves risk. Vernon slammed his hand on the table. This is blackmail. This is negotiation, I corrected. Something you taught me, Vernon. Always negotiate from a position of strength. Isn't that what you told the team? Right before you took my client presentation and put your name on it? The room went silent. The CEO looked between us. Is that true, Vernon? Before he could answer, the conference room door opened. A woman in an expensive suit entered, followed by 2 men carrying bankers' boxes. I apologize for the interruption, she said smoothly. I'm Diana Reynolds, from Sterling Partners. The CEO stood. Diana, we weren't expecting you until next week, she smiled tightly. Events have accelerated our timeline. May I speak with you privately? As they stepped outside, Vernon leaned toward me. What have you done? I raised an eyebrow. I don't know what you mean. Sterling Partners is evaluating us for acquisition. You knew that, did I? His eyes widened with realization. You told them about the building situation. The door reopened. The CEO returned, his face ashen. Diana remained in the doorway, watching. Sterling Partners is pausing acquisition talks, he announced. They have concerns about our stability given the real estate situation. All eyes turned to me. Vernon's voice was barely controlled. You just cost this company millions in valuation. All for what? Because you had to climb some stairs? Because you didn't get enough gold stars? I stood slowly, feeling the ache in my legs from those 65 floors. No, Vernon. Because you and others like you built a company culture that rewards the wrong things, that steals rather than creates, that climbs by pushing others down. I walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I didn't just buy a building. I bought time to decide what happens next. The room behind me erupted in urgent whispers. Through the glass reflection, I watched the CEO pull Vernon aside, their conversation intense and pointed. This wasn't over, not even close. The real revenge was just beginning to take shape, transforming from a 5-year dream into concrete reality. And as I turned back to face them, I saw something I'd waited years to see. Fear in Vernon's eyes. The next morning, I arrived at 7 a.m., watching Ajax Fire Systems technicians install the upgraded sprinklers. My muscles still burned from yesterday's climb, each step a reminder of Vernon's casual cruelty, but also of my triumph. Everything on schedule? I asked Hector. Yes, Miss Kapoor. The work should be completed by tomorrow evening. He hesitated. The Zencor team has been asking questions. They're nervous. Let them be, I said, checking my watch. Their all-hands meeting starts in an hour. After the chaos of yesterday's revelations, the CEO had called a company-wide meeting to address rumors spreading through Zencor. I hadn't been invited, of course, but I didn't need an invitation to attend events in my own building. At 7:55, I stood in the service corridor outside Zencor's main conference space, listening to the murmur of hundreds of employees. A text from my source inside confirmed the executive team had arrived. I straightened my blazer, took a deep breath, and pushed through the door. The room fell silent as I walked toward the stage where the CEO stood at the podium. Vernon and the other team leaders sat in a row behind him, their expressions ranging from surprise to outright hostility. Miss Kapoor, the CEO said, recovering quickly, this is a private company meeting. I'm aware, I replied, my voice carrying through the silent room. But since you're discussing the future of your tenancy in my building, I thought I should participate. Whispers erupted across the room. Many employees were hearing confirmation of the rumors for the first time. That's not necessary, the CEO said firmly. We'll continue our discussions through proper channels. Like the proper channels Vernon used yesterday when he forced me to climb 65 floors with presentation materials, by lying about elevator restrictions. More whispers. Vernon leaned forward, whispering urgently to the CEO, who frowned. That's an internal matter, the CEO replied. Is it? I stepped closer to the podium. Because it happened in my building, using my stairwells, which violates safety protocols, during a fire system inspection. Inspector Neal was quite concerned when I told him. Vernon stood abruptly. This is inappropriate. Security won't be removing me, I finished. They report to building management now. For 5 years, I'd watched Zencor's leadership manipulate information, control narratives, silence dissent. Today, I was changing that dynamic. I turned to face the employees. Many of you don't know me. I've worked at Zencor for 5 years in the design department. Yesterday, I revealed that I own this building and have issued an eviction notice to the company. The room erupted with voices. The CEO raised his hands. Everyone, please, we're handling this situation. Are you? I asked. Because your employees deserve to know that Sterling Partners has paused acquisition talks, that your leadership team is scrambling to find new office space, that jobs may be at risk. That's enough, Vernon shouted, moving toward me. I stood my ground. The truth is uncomfortable, isn't it, Vernon? Especially when you can't control it. The CEO stepped between us. Miss Kapoor, I understand you have grievances, but this approach isn't productive. I disagree. For 5 years, I've watched talented people leave this company because their work was stolen, their contributions minimized, their growth stunted by leaders who care more about protecting their positions than building something valuable. I gestured toward the audience. How many of you have had your ideas dismissed in meetings, only to see them presented by someone else later? How many have watched credit for your work go to others? How many have stayed silent because speaking up meant risking your job? Uncomfortable glances spread through the crowd. A few hands tentatively raised. This isn't just about me, I continued. It's about a system that rewards the wrong behaviors, that punishes innovation unless it comes from the right people. Vernon pushed past the CEO. You're just bitter because you couldn't cut it, because you weren't good enough. A voice called from the audience. That's not true. We all turned. Nisha from accounting stood, her hands shaking but her voice steady. Rukmini redesigned our entire client portal last year. I sat next to her while she worked on it for months. Then suddenly, it was presented as Damon's project. Another person stood, then another. Stories poured out, projects reassigned, credit stolen, bullying disguised as feedback. The CEO's face darkened as he glanced between the speakers and his leadership team. For perhaps the first time, he was seeing the reality beneath the polished presentations. Vernon's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is a coordinated attack. She's manipulating you all. Like you manipulated performance reviews? Someone called out. Like you manipulated client relationships? The room was slipping beyond the executive's control. The CEO stepped to the podium, voice firm. That's enough. This meeting is suspended. Everyone, please return to your departments. We'll address these concerns appropriately. As people reluctantly began filing out, he turned to me. I hope you're satisfied with the disruption you've caused. I didn't cause this disruption, I replied. I just removed the fear that kept it hidden. He gestured to a side door. My office, now. In the CEO's corner office, Vernon paced like a caged animal while Eden, Damon, Parker, and Lena sat stiffly on the sofa. The CEO took his seat behind the desk, motioning for me to sit opposite him. What do you want, Miss Kapoor? Really want? Beyond humiliating my leadership team, I met his gaze directly. I want change. By destroying what we've built? By fixing what's broken? Vernon stopped pacing. This is ridiculous. She's not a stakeholder in our company. She has no right to demand anything except rent, if we decide to stay. The CEO raised a hand to silence him. Let's be practical. Finding suitable space for 300 employees in 30 days is nearly impossible. The disruption would be devastating to our operations and client relationships. I'm aware, I said. Then perhaps we can reach an agreement that serves both our interests. I nodded. I'm listening. We need time. A 6-month extension, at minimum. In return, we're willing to pay a premium on the current lease rate. Money isn't the issue, I replied. Then what is? I looked around at the faces watching me, the people who had dismissed and underestimated me for years, who had seen me as nothing but a convenient stepping stone. Accountability, I said simply. Vernon snorted. Here we go again. with the revenge fantasy. No fantasy, I corrected. Reality. I have a proposal. I removed a folder from my bag and placed it on the desk. Inside is a new lease agreement. 6 months, as you requested, with an option to extend if certain conditions are met. The CEO opened the folder, scanning the document. His eyebrows rose. These conditions are extensive. They're necessary. He continued reading, his expression growing increasingly troubled. You want Vernon and Damon removed from the company? A complete audit of all projects for the past 5 years? Implementation of new attribution and promotion policies? This is unprecedented interference. Think of it as corrective action, I suggested. The price of poor management. Vernon lurched forward. This is blackmail. No, I replied calmly. This is consequence. The CEO set down the document. Even if I wanted to accept these terms, the board would never approve such interference. They might if they understood the alternative. I reached for my phone, pulling up an email. This morning, I received an inquiry from your largest competitor, Prism Digital. They're very interested in leasing this space should Zencor vacate. I watched comprehension dawn on their faces. You wouldn't, Eden whispered. Business involves difficult decisions, I replied, echoing the phrase Vernon had used countless times when cutting corners or dismissing concerns. The CEO studied me carefully. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've had 5 years to plan. Vernon slammed his hand on the desk. This is insane. We can't let her dictate who works here. Actually, the CEO said slowly, we might have to. What? The board meeting yesterday wasn't just about the building situation. It was also about the Sterling acquisition falling through, about our declining innovation metrics, about the troubling pattern of talent leaving for competitors. He looked at Vernon. They were already asking questions about leadership. Vernon's face paled. Richard, you can't be serious. After everything I've done for this company, what have you done exactly? The CEO, Richard, asked. Because based on what I heard downstairs, I'm beginning to wonder how much credit you've taken for others' work. For the first time, Vernon seemed at a loss for words. Richard turned back to me. I'll need to review these conditions thoroughly with legal. Some may need adjustment. I'm open to reasonable discussion, I said. But the core requirements are non-negotiable. He nodded slowly. I understand. As I stood to leave, Vernon stepped into my path. You think you've won, don't you? That this little power play fixes everything? No, I replied. I think this is just the beginning of fixing a broken system. One that you helped break. You have no idea what it takes to build something like Zencor. The sacrifices, the hard decisions. I know exactly what it takes, I said quietly. I've watched for 5 years. I've contributed for 5 years. I've learned for 5 years. Mostly how not to lead. His eyes narrowed. You'll fail. People like you always do. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But I'll fail on my own terms. Not because someone pushed me down to climb higher. 3 days later, I stood in my new office on the 65th floor, watching the city awaken below. My phone buzzed with a text from Artie. Board approved the revised agreement. Vernon and Damon out. Full audit proceeding. New policies being drafted. Congratulations. I set the phone down, emotions swirling. This wasn't just revenge. It was restoration. A rebalancing of scales too long tipped against people like me. Those with ideas but without connections. Those with talent but without pedigree. Those who work twice as hard for half the recognition. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Hector entered with a maintenance update, followed by Tara with the completed fire inspection report. The building passed inspection, Tara announced. All systems now exceed code requirements. And the elevator maintenance is complete, Hector added. All 65 floors operating perfectly. I smiled. Thank you both. After they left, I turned back to the window. In the reflection, I could see the empty desk behind me, the office that had once belonged to Vernon. Tomorrow, I would meet with Zencor's remaining leadership to begin implementing the changes required by our agreement. Next week, I would review applications for the new Chief Ethics Officer position I'd insisted they create. And in the coming months, I would watch as a toxic culture slowly transformed into something better. Not perfect, but better. All because I'd climbed 65 floors when ordered to. All because they never imagined I owned the building they treated so carelessly. All because they underestimated what I was capable of. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, feeling the solidity of what I'd built. Not just ownership of a building, but a foundation for change, for myself and for others. Revenge wasn't just about making Vernon and others like him suffer consequences. It was about creating space for something new to grow in the aftermath. And as I turned from the window to begin my day's work, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 5 years at Zencor. Possibility. Unlimited. Soaring possibility. Not because I'd climbed to the top, but because I'd changed what happened once I got there. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated or overlooked, tap that like button. Subscribe for more stories about moments when everything changes in an instant. I'd love to hear in the comments about a time when you discovered your own power in an unexpected way. Remember, sometimes the longest climbs lead to the most breathtaking views. And sometimes, those who force you to take the stairs have no idea you own the building. The cake sat in the middle of the conference table, blazing with enough candles to trigger the fire alarm. Through the dancing flames, I could make out the message scrawled in electric blue icing. Bye-bye, burden! To Phoebe finally getting shipped off where she can't drag us down anymore. Tate clinked his plastic champagne flute against Nina's, sloshing discount bubbly onto the table. 3 years of carrying your dead weight is officially over. The entire marketing team erupted in laughter as I stood frozen in the doorway. Someone had taped printouts of anchor symbols to my now empty desk chair. Get it? Chortled Drew, pointing at the decorations. Because you've been sinking this team since day one. Nina tossed back her drink and refilled it immediately. Remember when she suggested we focus on customer retention instead of new acquisitions? Like, hello? Basic economics much? She mimicked my voice with a simpering whine that sounded nothing like me. Or when she tried implementing that project management system. Leah rolled her eyes. 2 weeks of her color-coded spreadsheets before we dumped the whole thing. Tate raised his voice over the snickering. Let's not forget her quarterly presentations. Guys, I've literally taken naps during them and still didn't miss anything important. My knuckles whitened around the cardboard box containing my desk plants and spare sweater. I'd known they resented me, but witnessing their unfiltered disdain burned differently. The mask had completely dropped now that they believed I was being banished to the Rochester office, a transfer they'd interpreted as a demotion and effective exile. Toast, called Petra, my supervisor, standing dramatically on a chair. To whatever poor team has to deal with Phoebe next, may they have endless patience and very low expectations. To freedom! Someone shouted. I stepped into the room, their faces freezing momentarily before the grins returned. Wider, crueler. Oh, come on, Phoebe. Petra laughed, seeing my expression. It's just office humor. Can't you take a joke? This is exactly why you never fit in here. Drew thrust a slice of cake at me, frosting smearing across the paper plate. At least eat some cake before you disappear forever. We spent almost $30 on it. I accepted the plate, studying the faces around me. I accepted the plate, studying the faces of people who'd spent 3 years stepping on my ideas, speaking over me in meetings, taking credit for my work, and now celebrating that they'd never have to see me again. Thanks for the send-off, I said quietly. Petra smirked. Any parting words of wisdom before you go? I looked around the room one last time, memorizing each face, each expression. Then I set down my untouched cake. Just one thing, I said, my voice steady. I'll see you all on Monday. Confusion rippled through the room as I walked out, leaving my goodbye cake untouched. None of them understood what I meant. None of them knew that my transfer wasn't to Rochester. None of them had any idea that as of 9 a.m. Monday morning, I would be stepping into my new corner office at headquarters as Vice President of Marketing Operations, directly overseeing their entire division. The elevator doors closed on their puzzled faces, and for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself a genuine smile. If you're enjoying this workplace revenge story so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories that'll have you on the edge of your seat. Comment below if you've ever had colleagues underestimate you. I read every comment. My name is Phoebe Marsh. I'm 34, methodical to a fault, and the kind of person who color codes her sock drawer. I've always been the quiet one in the room, the observer, the note-taker, the one who speaks last and least. Not because I have nothing to say, but because I prefer to understand all angles before offering an opinion. 3 years ago, I joined the marketing team at Westridge, with a reputation for turning struggling departments around. My previous company had given me glowing recommendations after I'd streamlined their operations and doubled their conversion rates in 18 months. I arrived at Westridge expecting to do the same, analyze, optimize, transform. What I hadn't counted on was the culture shock. From day one, the Westridge marketing department operated like a high school popularity contest. Meetings were shouting matches where the loudest voice won. Strategy was determined by whoever had the most compelling lunch date with senior management. Results mattered less than who claimed credit for them. I tried adapting at first. I spoke up more in meetings, only to have Tate or Nina talk over me. I suggested process improvements, which Petra would dismiss publicly, then quietly implement weeks later as her own ideas. I stayed late analyzing campaign data while the others networked at happy hours that somehow I never got invited to. For 3 years, I was invisible when it benefited them and a scapegoat when things went wrong. The Middletown campaign tanked because Phoebe didn't provide adequate research. Petra had announced to the division head, despite the fact that my research report, which no one had bothered to read, had specifically warned against the approach they chose. The isolation was deliberate and methodical. When team lunches were planned, my calendar mysteriously received the invites after they'd already occurred. Project wins were celebrated without me. Project failures were laid at my feet during performance reviews. "You're just not a culture fit," Petra would say during my evaluations. "You need to be more of a team player." What she meant was, you need to play by our rules, laugh at our jokes, and never, ever outshine us. I almost quit a dozen times. Each morning, I'd sit in my car in the parking garage, rehearsing resignation speeches, but something stubborn in me refused to give them the satisfaction. Instead, I did what I do best. I observed, documented, and planned. While they were busy undermining me, I was quietly mapping the entire operation. I tracked which campaigns succeeded and why. I noted which clients were at risk due to neglect. I built shadow systems that modeled what the department could achieve if run efficiently. And I kept records of everything. Every stolen idea, every misattribution of blame, every manufactured failure. 6 months ago, something unexpected happened. The CEO of Westridge, Emmett Carlisle, made an unannounced visit to our floor. While Petra and her inner circle scrambled to prepare a presentation, I found myself alone in the elevator with him. "Rough morning?" he asked, nodding at the coffee stain on my sleeve, courtesy of Drew accidentally bumping into me earlier. I looked at Emmett's kind eyes and made a split-second decision. "Actually, rough 3 years," I replied. The elevator ride was only 40 seconds, but I used every moment. I didn't complain about my treatment. Instead, I outlined 3 specific problems with our marketing approach and proposed solutions for each. "Interesting," was all he said when the doors opened. "Very interesting." 2 weeks later, I received an email requesting my presence at headquarters for a meeting with the executive team. I told no one. When asked, I said I had a dentist appointment. During that meeting, I presented my complete analysis of the department's shortcomings and my vision for restructuring. I didn't mention the social dynamics or my personal treatment. I kept it strictly professional, data-driven, and solution-focused. When they offered me the vice president position, I had one request: that my transfer be announced to my team as a lateral move to the Rochester office. I wanted a clean break before returning as their superior. "Unusual approach," noted the HR director. "I have my reasons," I replied. And so the fiction was created. Petra and the team were told I was being transferred to Rochester, a struggling satellite office where problem employees were often sent before being phased out entirely. They assumed I was being put out to pasture. They never bothered to verify this information. They were too busy celebrating my departure. Which brings us back to that goodbye party. As I drove home from that mockery of a celebration, I didn't feel anger. I felt a cold, crystalline clarity. For 3 years, they had shown me exactly who they were when they thought I didn't matter. On Monday, they would discover just how much I had been paying attention. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. I reviewed personnel files, performance metrics, and project histories. I drafted a 90-day restructuring plan. I selected a charcoal gray suit for Monday that I'd never worn to the office before. By Sunday night, everything was ready. I slept soundly for the first time in years. Monday morning arrived with a gentle chime from my alarm. I dressed carefully, applied minimal makeup, and pulled my hair back in a simple, elegant twist. The woman in the mirror looked different, confident, composed, powerful. I arrived at headquarters at 7:30 a.m. My new office overlooked the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that hadn't been selected from a discount office supply catalog. My name was already on the door: Phoebe Marsh, Vice President of Marketing Operations. At my request, IT had scheduled a video conference with my former team for 9 a.m. Officially, it was to introduce them to their new VP. In reality, it was to watch their faces when they realized what had happened. As the clock ticked toward 9, my phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Hope Rochester's treating you well. Petra's having us meet some new hotshot VP this morning. Probably another middle-aged man with a golf handicap. Wish you were here to suffer through it with us. JK." I set my phone face down on the desk and opened my laptop. At precisely 9 a.m., I initiated the video call. One by one, their faces appeared on screen. I could see them gathered in the same conference room where they'd celebrated my departure 3 days earlier. The bye-bye burden cake was gone, but someone had forgotten to take down one of the anchor decorations. It swung gently behind Petra's head, like a pendulum. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Thank you for joining this call." I watched confusion bloom across their faces as they recognized me. Petra blinked rapidly. Drew's mouth fell open. Nina gripped her coffee mug so tightly I thought it might shatter. "There seems to be some confusion," Petra said, forcing a laugh. "Phoebe, aren't you supposed to be in Rochester? This call is scheduled with our new VP of Marketing Operations." "That's correct," I replied. "This call is with your new VP of Marketing Operations. That would be me." The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the wall clock ticking in their conference room through the video feed. "This is a joke," Tate finally said, looking around for confirmation. "Right? This is some kind of weird joke." "No joke," I said. "As of this morning, I am the Vice President of Marketing Operations, overseeing all regional marketing teams, including yours." Petra's face had drained of all color. But you were transferred. We were told." "You were told what you expected to hear?" I interrupted smoothly. "And none of you bothered to verify it, which, coincidentally, is just one example of the lack of due diligence I'll be addressing in my restructuring plan." Drew stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling Emmett." "Please do," I said. "He's expecting your call. In fact, he specifically asked me how I thought you'd all react to this news." Nina set down her mug, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Phoebe, about Friday, the party, we were just—" "Let's keep this professional," I cut in. "We have a lot to cover this morning, and I'm not interested in discussing the party. That's in the past. I'm much more interested in the future." I shared my screen, displaying a detailed organizational chart. You'll notice some changes effective immediately. Reporting structures have been modified based on performance metrics and project outcomes from the past 2 years. The chart showed a dramatic reshuffling. Petra no longer headed the team. Tate and Nina had been moved to separate projects under new supervisors. Drew had been reassigned entirely. "This can't be legal," Petra sputtered. "You can't just come in and—" "I can and I have," I said. "These changes have been approved at the highest level. But don't worry, Petra. No one is being fired today." I paused, allowing that to sink in before adding, "Though, after reviewing the performance reports, perhaps some of you might wish you were." I clicked to the next slide. "Now, let's discuss the first phase of our departmental transformation. We'll start with a comprehensive audit of all current projects, client communications, and resource allocations. I expect complete transparency and cooperation from everyone." The faces on my screen showed various stages of shock, anger, and fear. These people had tormented me for 3 years, believing I would never be in a position to affect their careers. They had underestimated me at every turn, dismissed my abilities, and celebrated my apparent downfall. Now they were beginning to understand their mistake. "One more thing," I said, my finger hovering over the button to end the call. "I'll be working primarily from headquarters, but I'll be visiting the regional office every Wednesday. Our first in-person meeting will be this week. I suggest you all come prepared to discuss your individual contributions to the department over the past year, with specific examples, of course." I smiled, not warmly, not coldly, just professionally. "Any questions before we wrap up this initial meeting?" No one spoke. 20 pairs of eyes stared back at me in stunned silence. "Excellent," I said. "Then I'll see you all on Wednesday. Have a productive day." I ended the call and sat back in my chair, heart pounding but outwardly calm. Phase 1 was complete. They knew who I was now. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was what I had planned for them next. Because the restructuring chart I'd shown them, that was just the beginning. My office phone rang exactly 16 minutes after the video call ended. Petra's name flashed on the display. I let it ring through to voicemail. 9 minutes later, she called again. Then Nina. Then Tate. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 23 unread emails from my former team members. I responded to none of them. Instead, I spent the day meeting with other department heads, reviewing quarterly projections, and finalizing my strategy for Wednesday's in-person visit. Every few hours, I checked the activity logs for our project management system. The regional office was suddenly buzzing with productivity. Files that hadn't been updated in months were being modified. Reports were being completed. Long-abandoned client communications were being renewed. Amazing what the right motivation could accomplish. At 5:17 p.m., my personal cell phone rang, a number I'd never given to anyone at work. It was Petra. "How did you get this number?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I have my ways," she said, attempting to sound casual. "Listen, Phoebe, I think we got off on the wrong foot this morning." I said nothing, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "The party, it wasn't what it looked like," she continued, her words tumbling out faster. "It was just silly office humor. We do that with everyone. Remember when Zach from accounting transferred? We gave him a calculator that would only display the number 8. It's tradition." "Was Zach's calculator decorated with tombstones too?" I asked quietly. "That was Drew's idea, not mine." She backpedaled. "Look, I know things weren't always perfect between us, but I've always respected your analytical approach." I closed my eyes, remembering all the times she'd called my methods obsessive and unnecessarily detailed in front of clients. "Is there something specific you need, Petra? I have dinner plans." "Actually, yes." Her tone brightened with false warmth. "I was hoping we could meet before Wednesday, just you and me, to align on vision and strategy. I have some fantastic ideas for restructuring that I think would complement your plans perfectly." "I'm sure you do," I replied, "but my schedule is fully booked until Wednesday. I'll see you at the office at 9 sharp. "But, good night, Petra." I ended the call and turned back to my computer. On the screen was the personnel file I'd been reviewing. Petra's performance history, including the evaluations she'd written about herself, versus the feedback submitted by her team members. The discrepancies were illuminating. For 3 years, Petra had positioned herself as the team's driving creative force, while dismissing my contributions as merely technical. What she never knew was that I'd been documenting everything, each stolen idea, each misattributed success, each manufactured failure assigned to me. I hadn't done it with revenge in mind. Documentation was simply my nature, the same unnecessarily detailed approach she'd mocked. Now those details would prove invaluable. Tuesday passed in a flurry of preparation. I met with HR to discuss the regional offices concerning turnover rate. I reviewed client feedback that had mysteriously never made it into official reports. I authorized a comprehensive audit of all marketing campaigns from the past 2 years, with special attention to resource allocation and attribution of outcomes. By Tuesday evening, my inbox contained panicked messages from nearly everyone on the team. Most followed a similar pattern: claims they had always valued me, explanations for past behaviors, and thinly veiled attempts to position themselves as my allies. Only Drew remained silent, though his project folders showed frantic activity as he attempted to clean up months of neglected work. Wednesday morning arrived with a crystal-clear sky and unusual warmth for early spring. I chose my outfit carefully, a tailored navy dress that I'd purchased specifically for this day. Professional yet confident, I drove to the regional office with windows down, letting the breeze clear my mind. The security guard did a double-take when I badged in. "Ms. Marsh? Thought you'd transferred to Rochester." "Change of plans," I replied with a smile. The elevator ride to the 4th floor gave me a moment to center myself. When the doors opened, I stepped into a transformed environment. Gone was the usual morning chatter. Instead, 20 people sat rigidly at their desks, eyes darting nervously toward the elevator. I walked unhurriedly past Tate, who suddenly became intensely focused on his computer screen. Nina stood abruptly, coffee in hand, mouth open to speak, but I continued past her without slowing. My former desk had been cleared of the anchor decorations and now displayed a pathetically obvious "Welcome back" sign. I continued to the conference room, where I found Petra already waiting, surrounded by neatly arranged presentation materials and a tray of pastries that hadn't been present at any previous meeting. "Phoebe, I mean, Ms. Marsh, or do you prefer VP Marsh?" She laughed nervously. "I took the liberty of preparing some visuals for our discussion today. And there's coffee coming. The good kind from that shop you mentioned once. I set my laptop down at the head of the table, her usual seat. Everyone will be here in 5 minutes. Until then, I'd like to review something with you privately. Her smile faltered. Of course, anything. I opened a folder and slid a document across the table. This is an analysis of the Brightline campaign from last year. Her eyes darted over the page, confusion evident. Right, the Brightline campaign. One of our successes. According to your report to upper management, yes, you claimed an 18% increase in conversion and attributed the strategy to what you called your innovative segmentation approach. That's right, she nodded vigorously. My approach really revolutionized how we— This, I interrupted, sliding another document toward her, is my original proposal for that campaign, submitted 3 weeks before yours. You'll notice the segmentation strategy is identical, down to the percentage allocations. Her face paled. There must be some mistake. Great minds just think alike, you know. Perhaps, but these, I continued, placing a third document before her, are the actual results of the campaign, not an 18% increase. A 4% increase, which barely covered the additional ad spend you authorized without approval. The conference room door opened as team members began filing in. Petra hurriedly gathered the papers, shoved them into a folder, and plastered on a bright smile for the arrivals. Welcome, everyone, she announced with forced cheer. Exciting day ahead with our new VP. I watched as they arranged themselves around the table. Nina positioned herself directly to my right, always the strategist. Tate chose a seat halfway down, attempting to blend in. Drew slunk in last, taking a chair in the corner, as far from me as possible. Thank you all for coming, I began once everyone was seated. Today marks the beginning of significant changes for this department. For the next hour, I outlined my restructuring plan in meticulous detail. Projects were reassigned based on actual skill sets rather than self-promotion. Reporting structures were flattened to increase transparency. New metrics for success were established that valued substance over showmanship. Additionally, I said, nearing the end of my presentation, I've identified concerning patterns in how credit has been assigned for successful initiatives, as well as how blame has been distributed for failures. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Moving forward, all project contributions will be tracked through our new management system. Each team member will submit weekly progress reports directly to me. Attribution will be verifiable and transparent. Nina's hand shot up. Isn't that a bit excessive? It could hamper our creative flow. Interesting perspective, I replied, especially coming from someone who claimed credit for the Westlake rebranding that was primarily developed by Zoe. Zoe, a quiet designer who'd been with the company less than a year, looked up in surprise from her notebook. That's not, I mean, Zoe contributed, but the concept was mine, Nina stammered. The timestamp on the initial concept file says otherwise, I noted, as do the revision histories, showing your only contributions came after the client had already approved Zoe's design. Nina sank back in her chair, face burning. Any other concerns about the new tracking system? I asked the silent room. No hands raised. Excellent. Now, let's discuss individual roles moving forward. One by one, I outlined new responsibilities. Some were promotions, mostly for the quieter team members, whose work had gone unrecognized. Others were lateral moves that stripped away artificial titles while maintaining core duties. And some, specifically Petra, Nina, Tate, and Drew, found themselves with dramatically reduced authority. Petra will transition from team director to client relations specialist, focusing exclusively on the accounts she hasn't lost in the past year. Petra's face contorted. You can't. I've been director for 5 years. And in that time, client retention has dropped 22%, I replied evenly. Your strengths clearly lie elsewhere. I'll fight this, she hissed, dropping all pretense of friendship. Emmett and I go way back. Feel free to discuss it with him, I said. He personally approved these changes after reviewing the same data I did. The restructuring continued. Nina was moved from creative lead to content writer. Tate lost his project management role entirely, reassigned to analytics, the department he'd repeatedly mocked as the number crunchers. Drew, who'd been responsible for the tombstone decorations, found himself reporting directly to Zoe, whose ideas he'd been stealing for months. By meeting's end, the power dynamics had been completely inverted. Those who'd spent years claiming credit for others' work now found themselves accountable to the very people they'd exploited. These changes take effect immediately, I concluded. New access permissions have already been updated in our systems. You'll find detailed descriptions of your revised roles in your email. I closed my laptop. One final note. I understand change can be difficult. Anyone who feels they cannot adapt to this new structure is welcome to tender their resignation. I'll personally ensure you receive excellent references, accurately reflecting your contributions here. The threat beneath the offer was clear: stay and work under new rules, or leave with a truthful reference that might make finding equivalent positions challenging. That's all for now. Individual meetings will begin this afternoon. Zoe, you're first at 1 p.m. As everyone filed out in stunned silence, Petra lingered behind. You won't get away with this, she said when we were alone, her voice low and dangerous. You think you've won? This isn't over. I met her gaze steadily. You're right about one thing, Petra. This isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. The air between us crackled with tension as I gathered my materials. 3 years of dismissal, theft, and sabotage had culminated in this moment. But unlike the revenge fantasies I'd occasionally indulged in during my darkest days, I felt no triumphant surge of joy, no vindictive satisfaction. Instead, I felt something much more powerful: purpose. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about correction, about rebuilding a broken system, about creating the department that should have existed all along, one where work was valued over politics, where substance mattered more than style, where genuine talent could thrive. And if those who'd tormented me suffered in the process, that was simply an inevitable consequence of justice being served. Your one-on-one is scheduled for 4 p.m., I informed Petra as I walked toward the door. Don't be late. I value punctuality. As I stepped into the hallway, 20 pairs of eyes darted away, pretending they hadn't been watching the conference room door. The next phase of my plan was about to begin, and not one of them could imagine what was coming. The afternoon unfolded like a series of carefully orchestrated chess moves. Each one-on-one meeting revealed another layer of my strategy. I started with Zoe and the other quiet performers, the ones who'd been overlooked and undervalued for years. Their meetings were brief, positive, focused on opportunities rather than grievances. I watched them leave my temporary office walking taller, energized by finally being seen. As the day progressed, the mood in the department shifted. Whispered conversations in break rooms fell silent when I passed. Tate paced outside my door during his scheduled slot, rehearsing excuses I could hear through the thin walls. Come in, I called precisely at his appointed time. He entered with an expression I'd never seen on his face before: fear. Sit down, Tate. I gestured to the chair across from me. Let's discuss your new role in analytics. Look, Phoebe, VP Marsh, there's been a huge misunderstanding, he began, words tumbling out. All those times I interrupted you in meetings, I was just excited about your ideas, and that project tracker you developed that I said wouldn't work, I was trying to challenge you to make it even better. I let him ramble for 90 seconds before raising my hand to stop him. I'm not interested in rewriting history, Tate. I'm interested in results. I turned my monitor so he could see the screen. This is your new performance dashboard. Every task, every deadline, every deliverable will be tracked here, visible to the entire team. His eyes widened. But you can't expect. No one can perform under that kind of scrutiny. Interesting, I replied. You've repeatedly claimed to handle triple the workload of anyone else on the team. This system simply verifies those claims with data. That's different. Creative work can't be measured like, you're not in creative anymore, I reminded him. You're in analytics now, where everything is measured. His face flushed dark red. This is personal. You're punishing me because of your performance metrics. I finished for him, sliding a folder across the desk. 3 major projects late in the past 6 months. Client complaints about misrepresented data, consistently taking credit for work primarily completed by others. That's not fair. Everyone does that here. It's how the game is played. The game has new rules now, I said simply. You're welcome to play by them or find another table. By late afternoon, the pattern was clear. Each person who had tormented me discovered that their new role precisely matched their documented weaknesses. Nina, who had belittled my writing, now had to produce content that passed through 3 approval layers. Drew, who had called my designs basic, now reported to Zoe, whose work he had routinely stolen. At 3:58 p.m., I prepared for my final meeting of the day, Petra. She arrived 2 minutes early, composed and calculating. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by something more dangerous: adaptation. Petra had survived in corporate environments for years by shapeshifting to whatever each situation required. "I've been reflecting on your feedback," she began smoothly, settling into the chair. "You're absolutely right about the need for more accountability. I'm excited to focus on client relations and repair any damaged partnerships." Her pivot to supportive colleague was impressive but transparent. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied, maintaining a neutral expression, "especially since client retention will be your only performance metric moving forward." Her smile faltered slightly. "Only metric? Surely my experience in strategy development will not be relevant to your new position," I finished. "You'll be handling exclusively the Hudson account." The color drained from her face. "Hudson? But they've been threatening to leave for months. They're impossible to please." "Yes, they are," I agreed, "particularly since you blamed their last campaign's failure on execution errors by the technical team rather than your flawed strategy." "That's not—" "I spoke with their CMO yesterday," I continued. "Explained the restructuring. Promised them you would personally oversee every aspect of their account moving forward. They've agreed to give us one last chance, with you as their dedicated point of contact." Petra's carefully constructed facade cracked. "That's setting me up to fail. Hudson is a lost cause." "Then consider it an opportunity to prove your client relation skills," I said, opening her file. "Now, there's another matter we need to discuss: the Brightline campaign data discrepancy. Look, I may have rounded up some numbers. You inflated results by 14% and took credit for a strategy you didn't develop," I corrected, "which might explain why the audit team will be here tomorrow morning." Her eyes widened. "Audit team? From headquarters. They'll be reviewing all campaign reports from the past 3 years, comparing claimed results against actual performance data." That's departmental standard procedure," she stammered. "Everyone adjusts numbers to tell the right story." "Not anymore," I said. "The audit was Emmett's idea, actually, after I showed him the discrepancies in the Brightline numbers." Petra's breathing quickened. "This is a witch hunt." "No, it's accountability," I corrected. "The audit team doesn't report to me. They're independent. They'll simply find what they find." "And if they find issues with my reporting?" I shrugged. "That would be between you and the compliance committee." For the first time, real fear showed in her eyes. This wasn't just about demotions or restructuring anymore. This was about professional integrity. "You've been planning this," she whispered, "all along. The quiet act, the detailed notes, the perfect employee routine, it was all leading to this moment." I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. "No, Petra, you've been creating this moment for 3 years. I just documented it." The weight of realization settled over her. Every shortcut, every stolen idea, every manipulated number was coming back in a wave she couldn't outrun. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "Just tell me what it will take to make this go away." "Nothing is going away," I replied. "The audit happens tomorrow. Your new role begins immediately. The consequences of your past actions will unfold, as they unfold." "So this is your revenge," she said bitterly. "This isn't revenge," I corrected her. "This is restoration." For 3 years, this department has rewarded the wrong things: self-promotion over substance, politics over performance, volume over value. I'm simply restoring balance. I closed her file. "You still have choices, Petra. You can resign today. You can stay and attempt to succeed in your new role. You can face the audit and accept whatever comes. But you cannot continue as you have been. None of you can." She stood up slowly, composure shattered. "You won't last. They'll see through you eventually." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, "but by then, the systems I'm implementing will be firmly in place. The culture will have shifted, and the way this department operates will have fundamentally changed, with or without me." As she reached the door, I added, "One last thing, Petra. That goodbye party you threw? Keep the decorations. You might need them sooner than you think." The audit team arrived promptly at 9 a.m. Thursday morning. By noon, they had requested access to all campaign files from the past 3 years. By Friday afternoon, Petra, Nina, and 2 other senior team members had submitted their resignations rather than face the audit's conclusions. Tate lasted 2 weeks in analytics before quitting, unable to function in a role that required verifiable results rather than charisma. Drew held on longer but eventually transferred to another department after failing to meet Zoe's clearly documented expectations. 1 month after my goodbye party, the marketing department was nearly unrecognizable. New talent had been promoted from within. Collaborative processes had replaced competitive power plays. Client satisfaction scores had already begun to rise. On a rainy Tuesday, exactly 6 weeks after becoming VP, I found a small box on my desk at headquarters. Inside was a plastic cake topper, one of the anchor decorations from my farewell celebration. Attached was a note in Zoe's handwriting. Found this while cleaning out storage. Thought you might appreciate the reminder of how far we've come. I smiled, placing the anchor in my desk drawer, not as a souvenir of past humiliation, but as a symbol of transformation, both the department's and my own. That afternoon, I received an email from Emmett requesting a meeting to discuss the remarkable turnaround in regional marketing performance. The audit findings had been conclusive. Years of misreported results and misattributed credit had masked serious structural problems that were now being systematically addressed. As I prepared my presentation for Emmett, I reflected on the past 6 weeks. My so-called revenge hadn't been about destroying careers or inflicting pain. It had been about creating a department where success came from genuine achievement rather than manipulation, where credit went to those who earned it, where accountability wasn't a punishment but a standard. In the end, the most satisfying revenge wasn't watching my tormentors fall. It was building something better from the ruins of what they'd created, and knowing they would recognize, too late, that I had been capable of it all along. They had thrown me a goodbye party, never imagining I was headed somewhere they would have to answer to me. They had celebrated getting rid of me, never suspecting I would be the architect of their professional futures. They had underestimated me at every turn, and in doing so, they had given me the perfect opportunity to prove exactly what I could do. Not with shouting or showmanship, not with politics or manipulation, but with quiet, methodical, undeniable results, just as I had always worked. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside, I hope this story reminds you that sometimes the best response isn't immediate confrontation. It's patient documentation and strategic planning. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't what you do to others, but what you build for yourself. Drop a comment below if you've ever had a workplace experience like Phoebe's, and subscribe for more stories about justice served with perfect timing. Because remember, success is the best revenge, but success with receipts? That's simply unbeatable. The moment Brady finished critiquing my quarterly sales numbers, he paused, looked at me with those steel gray eyes, and said, "I think we both know you're not cut out for this position, Lane." I swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure. The conference room suddenly felt airless. "Your performance is," he checked his notes dramatically, "consistently below target, 5% below last quarter, 8% below now. But the Keystone account," I started. "The account you nearly lost?" Brady interrupted, his voice dripping with disdain. "The one where the client called me directly because they couldn't reach you?" That wasn't true. I had been in the hospital with my mother. I'd told him. I'd arranged coverage. I explained that situation, I said quietly. "Excuses don't pay the bills," Brady replied, standing up. He began pacing, energized by my discomfort. "This department needs people who deliver, not people who," he gestured vaguely at me, "crack under pressure." My eyes burned. I blinked rapidly, but it was too late. A tear escaped, then another. Brady stopped pacing. His expression changed, not to sympathy, but to something worse. Satisfaction. "Oh, is this happening?" he said, his voice rising with excitement. "Are we getting waterworks now?" I wiped my cheek, mortified. "I'm fine." That's when he did it. Brady stepped back, raised his arms, and did an actual dance. 2 hip thrusts, a shoulder shimmy, and a spin. "This is perfect," he laughed. "Best performance review ever." The conference room door was open. Through my tears, I could see Petra from accounting glance in, then quickly look away. "I've been trying to clean house for months," Brady continued, practically giddy. "Do you know how hard it is to fire people these days? But a documented performance issue, plus emotional instability?" He pretended to kiss his fingertips. Chef's kiss. He sat on the edge of the table, leaning toward me. "Between us, Lane, this is the best day ever. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was 10 months of belittlement. Maybe it was watching my mother fight cancer while this man made my workdays hell. Maybe it was just time." I straightened my shoulders, wiped my tears, and smiled. "Mine too," I whispered. Brady blinked, confused. "What?" I said. "This is the best day ever for me too." The recording app on my phone had been running since I'd entered the room, tucked discreetly in my jacket pocket. and the door Brady had left wide open. It wasn't just Petra who had heard his celebration of my tears. What happened next would change everything, but not in the way Brady expected. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to like and subscribe. Leave a comment sharing the worst boss you've ever had. I read every single one. Now, let's get back to what happened after Brady's victory dance. My name is Lane Winters. Before all this happened, friends described me as relentlessly optimistic, maybe to a fault. I'm 32, with a degree in business that took me 7 years to finish because I worked full-time throughout college. I have one tattoo, a tiny compass on my wrist, can identify most birds by their calls, and hadn't cried at work until that day with Brady. I wasn't always at TechGrow. After college, I'd built a respectable career at smaller companies, but TechGrow represented my big break, a name that actually impressed people at dinner parties. When I landed the sales position, my mother hung the company newsletter announcement on her refrigerator. My daughter making it big, she'd say to anyone who visited. Brady wasn't my boss initially. I reported to a woman named Danny, who'd been tough but fair. Under her guidance, I'd exceeded quotas for 3 straight quarters and earned rookie salesperson recognition. But reorganizations happen, and suddenly Brady was transferred in from another division. Everything changed within weeks. First came the meeting invitations, always scheduled during my lunch break, or 5 minutes before quitting time. Then the impossible deadlines. Then the public criticism. Lane, explain to everyone why the Azimuth team hasn't signed yet. He'd say during team meetings, when he knew perfectly well they were still in their budget approval process. After each ambush, he'd corner me. Just pushing you to grow, he'd say with a smile that reminded me of a nature documentary I'd watched about predators. Other people noticed. He's threatened by you, my colleague Owen whispered after a particularly brutal meeting. Your numbers were better than his when he was in sales. I didn't want to believe people could be so calculating. I doubled my efforts, worked weekends, brought in 3 new accounts. My customer satisfaction scores were the highest in the department. None of it mattered. During our first official performance review, Brady had stared at my accomplishments and simply said, anyone can get lucky once. My mother got sick around month 6 of Brady's reign. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. I told Brady immediately and requested occasional flexibility for her treatments. We all have personal issues, he'd said, not looking up from his phone. I need someone reliable. The day of my mother's first major surgery, Brady scheduled an emergency client meeting that ran 3 hours long. I arrived at the hospital just as she was being wheeled back to recovery. It's okay, sunshine, she'd mumbled through the anesthesia haze. Your job is important. That night, I nearly wrote my resignation letter. But my mother's treatments were expensive, even with insurance, and TechGrow's health plan was covering costs that would have bankrupted me elsewhere. So I stayed, and Brady escalated. The Keystone account was my biggest victory and my greatest heartbreak. I'd pursued them for months, through 14 meetings and 3 different proposal revisions. When their CEO finally called to say they were choosing us over our biggest competitor, I actually danced around my apartment. 2 days later, my mother collapsed. I spent 36 hours in the ICU, my laptop balanced on the uncomfortable hospital chair, as I worked remotely. I arranged for Owen to cover an in-person meeting with Keystone, briefed him thoroughly, and notified Brady. When I returned, Brady called me into his office. Keystone almost walked, he said. The CEO called me directly because apparently you were unreachable. That's not possible, I said. I had my phone the entire time. There were no missed calls. Are you calling me a liar? Brady asked, voice dangerously quiet. That night, I checked my call logs obsessively. Nothing from Keystone. I even called their office the next day under the pretense of following up. Their office manager confirmed no one had tried to reach me. I didn't confront Brady again. Something told me documenting patterns might be more important than winning individual battles. So I began keeping records, email exchanges, meeting notes, my daily schedule, voice memos after particularly concerning interactions. I didn't know what I'd do with this information. Filing a complaint seemed futile when Brady played golf with the regional director. Then came the performance review where he danced. As I sat there, watching him celebrate my tears, something inside me shifted. All those months of diplomatic responses, of giving benefit of doubt, of trying to communicate better as HR had suggested during my one attempted complaint, it all crystallized into clarity. I stood up. Where are you going? Brady asked, surprised. We're not finished. Oh, I think we are, I said, my voice steadier than it had been all day. Sit down, Lane, Brady ordered. If you walk out now, I'll have to note insubordination. I turned at the door. Do what you need to do, Brady. I certainly will. As I walked through the office, past curious glances and whispered conversations, my phone felt heavy in my pocket. The recording was still going, and I knew exactly where I was heading next. The elevator ride to the third floor felt endless. My heart pounded as the numbers lit up. 1, 2, 3. The doors opened, and I stepped out, heading toward a department I'd never visited before. The placard on the door read, Human Resources. The HR department was quieter than the sales floor, with muted lighting and walls painted a soft blue. A woman looked up from behind a desk, her expression shifting from professional welcome to concern when she saw my face. Can I help you? She asked. I need to speak with someone, I said, my voice unsteady. It's about my manager, Brady. She nodded. Let me get Jasmine for you. 5 minutes later, I sat across from Jasmine Kwan, HR director. She had kind eyes and hands that remained perfectly still as I talked. I recorded something, I said, pulling out my phone. I didn't plan to, but after months of this, I started documenting interactions. Jasmine didn't immediately reach for the phone. Before we listen to anything, I need you to understand our company policy on recordings. My heart sank. Am I in trouble for recording? Not necessarily, she said carefully. Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state for recordings. However, there are workplace harassment exceptions. She studied me. Tell me what's been happening first. For the next 40 minutes, I talked about Brady's arrival, the sabotage, the impossible standards, the incidents with my mother's illness. As I spoke, Jasmine took notes, occasionally asking for clarification but never interrupting my flow. When I finished, she looked at her notepad, then back at me. I'd like to hear the recording now, she said. I played it. Brady's voice filled the small office. His critique of my performance, his excitement at my tears, the unmistakable sounds of his victory dance, his declaration that it was the best day ever. When it finished, Jasmine was silent for so long, I thought perhaps the recording hadn't been as damning as I believed. I'll need to escalate this immediately, she finally said. Can you email me that audio file? What happens now? I asked. We'll conduct an investigation. In the meantime, you shouldn't return to your desk. Do you have personal items you need? I thought about my mother's photo, my spare sweater, the plant I'd kept alive for 3 years. Yes, I'll have someone collect them for you. We'll pay you for the remainder of the day, but I'd like you to go home and wait for my call. She handed me her card. My direct line is on here. Am I being fired? I asked, panic rising. No, she said firmly. This is standard procedure when investigating harassment claims. It protects everyone involved. I walked out of the building in a daze. The afternoon sun felt too bright, the traffic too loud. I'd done it, spoken up, shared evidence. But now what? Brady had connections. I was expendable. My phone rang as I reached my car. Unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Lane, it's Owen. What's happening? Brady's been called to HR, and someone from facilities is packing your stuff. I leaned against my car. I filed a complaint. A pause. About time, he said finally. Need anything? Just let me know if you hear anything. Will do. And Lane? Good for you. I drove home to my apartment, a small one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian house. As I climbed the stairs, my legs felt weighted, each step an effort. Inside, I collapsed onto my couch, suddenly exhausted. My phone remained silent for 3 hours. No call from Jasmine. No updates from Owen. No angry message from Brady. The silence was almost worse than confrontation. At 4:30, my phone finally rang. Jasmine. Lane, thank you for your patience, she began. I've had several meetings this afternoon regarding your situation. My throat tightened. And? Brady has been placed on administrative leave while we complete our investigation. I sat up straighter. What does that mean exactly? It means he's not allowed in the office or to contact any employees, including you, while we investigate your claims and speak with other team members. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by doubt. For how long? That depends on our findings, Jasmine said. These investigations typically take 5 to 10 business days. After we hung up, I texted my mother. Something happened at work. Can I come over? 20 minutes later, I sat at her kitchen table, the familiar smell of chamomile tea surrounding us. My mother looked tired. Chemotherapy had thinned her once thick hair, and weight loss had hollowed her cheeks, but her eyes remained sharp. I told her everything. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. You know what I see? I see a woman who tried every reasonable approach before taking a stand. You didn't rush to judgment. You gave him chances. You documented facts. I'm scared, I admitted. What if they don't believe me? What if Brady convinces them I'm the problem? She squeezed my hand. Then you'll handle that too. But right now, breathe. You've done the hard part. I stayed for dinner, helped her sort medications for the week, and left feeling marginally better. As I drove home, Owen called. Office rumor mill is churning, he said without preamble. Brady was escorted out by security. He wasn't happy. Did he say anything about me? Not that I heard, but he wasn't exactly holding court. Listen, a bunch of us are meeting for drinks at Highland Tavern. Want to join? The thought of facing colleagues terrified me. I don't know. People are on your side, Lane. More than you realize. An hour later, I nervously pushed open the door to Highland Tavern. I spotted Owen at a large table in the back, surrounded by 6 colleagues from various departments. My heart hammered as I approached. She's here, Owen announced, pulling out a chair beside him. To my surprise, Petra from accounting stood up and hugged me. I told HR what I heard, she whispered. He was horrible to you. As I sat down, others shared similar sentiments. He's had complaints before, said Teo from customer service. My friend in the Northeast office warned me about him when he transferred here. He threw me under the bus in the Vanguard presentation, added Marielle, another sales representative. Changed my slides 10 minutes before and then criticized me for the errors. I listened, stunned. All this time, I'd thought I was Brady's only target, his special project. But the pattern was bigger than me. The next day passed in anxious waiting. I cleaned my apartment, took a long walk, checked my phone every few minutes. Nothing from HR. On day 3, Jasmine called. We'd like you to come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. for a meeting. We'll have updates on the situation. Will Brady be there? I asked. No, she assured me. Just myself and Gregory Wilson, our VP of Employee Relations. The VP's involvement sent my anxiety spiraling. Why would they need someone so senior, unless this was bigger than I thought? Or worse, unless they were preparing to terminate me. I barely slept that night, rehearsing what I'd say, imagining best and worst case scenarios. By morning, I felt hollow-eyed but resolute. The TechGrow building looked different as I approached it, less intimidating somehow. I'd spent months dreading entering those doors, but today, I walked in with my head high. Security had a visitor badge waiting for me. The elevator ride to the 4th floor, executive level, was swift and silent. Jasmine met me in the reception area. Thank you for coming in, she said, leading me down a hallway to a small conference room. Gregory Wilson was already seated, his presence commanding despite his relaxed posture. He stood when I entered, extending his hand. Miss Winters, thank you for bringing this situation to our attention. We all sat down. Gregory placed a folder on the table between us. We've conducted a thorough investigation, he began. We reviewed your recording, interviewed team members, and examined performance metrics and communication records. He opened the folder. What we found was troubling, not just regarding your situation, but a pattern of behavior. Jasmine leaned forward. Lane, based on our findings, Brady will not be returning to his position. The words hung in the air, impossible to process immediately. He's being terminated? I finally asked. Gregory nodded. Effective immediately. The company has a zero-tolerance policy for the type of behavior documented. Relief crashed through me like a wave, followed immediately by disbelief. Had it really been that simple? After months of suffering, one recording, and suddenly justice? There's more we need to discuss, Jasmine continued, including your return to work. We've reviewed your performance data separate from Brady's assessments. Gregory nodded. Your actual numbers tell a very different story than what was presented in your review. In fact, you're consistently in the top quartile of performers. We'd like to offer you a choice, Jasmine said. You can return to your current team, which will have an interim manager until we hire a replacement. Or, she glanced at Gregory, who continued, we have an opening in our enterprise division. It would be a promotion, with additional responsibilities and appropriate compensation adjustment. My mind raced. Was this really happening, from fearing termination to being offered a promotion? I'll need time to consider, I managed to say. Of course, Gregory agreed. Take the weekend. We'd like you back on Monday either way. As I stood to leave, Gregory added, one more thing, Miss Winters. The company would like to formally apologize for what you experienced. It should never have happened. I walked out of TechGrow feeling lighter than I had in months. In the parking lot, I called my mother with the news. "That's wonderful, sunshine," she exclaimed. "Which position will you take?" "I'm not sure yet," I said, "but there's something else I need to do first." I ended the call and sat in my car, staring at the building. Brady was gone. I should have felt nothing but relief and vindication, but something wasn't sitting right. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my documentation folder. Voice memos, email screenshots, calendar invites. The pieces of a larger puzzle I'd been too close to see clearly. Brady's firing wasn't enough. Not after what he'd done to me, to others before me, to my relationship with my dying mother. A plan began forming in my mind, not revenge exactly, but something more precise, more complete, because there was something Jasmine and Gregory didn't know, something nobody knew except me. And on Monday morning, everything would change again. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in nearly a year. I chose a dark blue blazer, something I'd stopped wearing after Brady once commented, "It made me look like I was trying too hard," and drove to TechGrow with the windows down, letting the spring air rush through the car. I'd spent the weekend organizing my thoughts and finalizing my decision. The enterprise division promotion was tempting, but something told me running away wasn't the answer. Not this time. In the lobby, heads turned as I walked toward the elevator. Word had spread. I smiled politely, neither acknowledging the whispers nor shrinking from them. Jasmine met me at the elevator. "Have you made your decision?" "I have," I said. "I'd like to stay with my current team." She looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "The enterprise position." "I'm sure," I interrupted gently. "I've built relationships with my clients. I know the products. And frankly, I've earned my place there." She nodded slowly. "All right. Your desk is as you left it. The team's been told you're returning today, and Andrea Chen will be interim manager until we find a permanent replacement." As we walked toward the sales department, Jasmine added, "Gregory mentioned you seemed unsettled after our meeting. Is there something else we should address?" I stopped walking. "Actually, yes. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you, Gregory, and Tanya from legal this afternoon." Jasmine's eyebrows rose. "Legal? Lane, if you're considering action against the company?" "It's not that," I assured her. "It's about protecting TechGrow. There's information you need to have." She studied me for a moment. "I'll arrange it. 2 o'clock? Perfect." The sales floor quieted as I walked in. Owen was the first to approach, wrapping me in a quick hug. "Welcome back, warrior." Others followed, some with handshakes, some with awkward but genuine words of support. Andrea, our new interim manager, waved me into Brady's former office. "I wanted to check in before the morning huddle," she said, closing the door. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Ready to work," I answered honestly. She nodded. "Good, because there's something you should know. The Keystone account? They've been asking for you specifically. They refused to work with Brady after some incident." I kept my expression neutral. "I'll reach out to them immediately." Back at my desk, I found everything exactly as I'd left it. My plant had been watered. My mother's photo stood in its usual spot. Even my color-coded folders remained neatly aligned. I turned on my computer and entered my password. While it booted up, I checked my phone. A text from my mother. "Proud of you, sunshine. Show them who you really are." At 10 o'clock, Andrea called the huddle. I joined the team in the conference room, the same one where Brady had danced just days earlier. The memory no longer stung. It felt distant, like watching a movie of someone else's life. Andrea ran through updates efficiently, assigned new leads, and ended with, "Lane, anything to add about Keystone?" All eyes turned to me. "Just that I'll be meeting with them tomorrow. They're considering expanding their contract." The rest of the morning passed in a flurry of emails, calls, and genuine productivity. For the first time in months, I worked without looking over my shoulder, without dreading criticism or ambush. At 1:45, I gathered my laptop and a small external drive I'd brought from home. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt different this time, purposeful rather than anxiety-inducing. In the conference room sat Jasmine, Gregory, and a woman I assumed was Tanya from legal. She had silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. "Lane," Gregory greeted me. "Jasmine says you have information pertinent to legal?" I set my laptop on the table. "I do. It concerns Brady, but goes beyond my personal situation." Tanya leaned forward. "Before we continue, I should clarify that I represent TechGrow, not individual employees." "I understand," I said. What I'm about to show you protects the company's interests. I opened my laptop and plugged in the external drive. When Brady became my manager, strange things started happening with client accounts. Not just communication issues, but discrepancies in contracts and commission structures. Gregory frowned. What kind of discrepancies? At first, small ones. A percentage point on commission rates. Delivery timelines extended without client approval. But then, I turned the screen so they could see. This is the original contract I drafted for the Keystone account. And this, I said, opening another file, is what was submitted to finance after Brady reviewed it. Tanya put on her glasses, examining both documents. The pricing structure is different. 15% different, I confirmed. But look at the signature page. All three leaned closer. The client signatures are identical, pixel for pixel, I explained, because one was copied from the other. The clients never saw or approved the changed version. Gregory's expression darkened. How did you discover this? The day Brady claimed Keystone had tried to reach me, it bothered me, so I called my contact there to apologize for missing their call, except they hadn't called. When I mentioned the contract change, they asked what change. That's when I started digging. I clicked through more files. It wasn't just Keystone. I found 7 accounts with similar discrepancies over the past 10 months. Tanya removed her glasses. These are serious allegations. Do you have proof the alterations came from Brady specifically? This was the moment. I took a deep breath. I do, I said, opening a new folder. Each document in our system is tagged with edit history. Brady was careful to override most of these, but he missed something critical. I pulled up a file showing metadata logs. Our system backs up version histories to the cloud. Even when someone deletes the local record, the cloud instance maintains edit signatures. Gregory looked stunned. And these show Brady altering contracts? Yes, but more importantly, I continued, they show where the funds were diverted. The commission differences weren't random. They were calculated to be just under finance audit thresholds. I opened one final document, a spreadsheet tracking payment discrepancies against a separate account number. This account belongs to Prism Consulting, I said quietly. A company registered 3 years ago in Brady's brother-in-law's name, but with Brady as a silent partner. The room fell silent. Tanya was the first to speak. How did you access all this information? Legally, I assured her. I'm authorized to view contract histories for my accounts. The connection to Prism came from public records. Anyone could find it. Gregory rubbed his forehead. Why didn't you bring this to us during the initial investigation? I closed my laptop. Because I needed to be certain. I wasn't building a harassment case anymore. This is fraud. Jasmine looked pale. The company could be liable if clients discover unauthorized changes to signed contracts. Which is why I'm bringing this to you now, I said. Not for my sake, but for TechGrow's protection, and for the other salespeople whose commissions were affected. Tanya was already making notes. We'll need to conduct a forensic audit immediately, and contact authorities. Gregory nodded grimly. Lane, we'll need your full cooperation with this investigation. Of course, I said. I've prepared complete documentation for you. I handed Tanya the external drive. Everything's organized by client and date. As the meeting concluded, Gregory pulled me aside. This goes far beyond what we uncovered in our investigation. You could have just walked away after Brady was terminated. I thought about my mother, fighting her own battle with quiet dignity. About Owen and the others who'd suffered under Brady's management. About the clients who'd trusted me. Some things matter more than walking away, I said simply. The next 4 weeks were intense. I split my time between my regular sales duties and assisting with the fraud investigation. Forensic accountants confirmed my findings and uncovered even more discrepancies dating back to Brady's previous position. The company handled the situation with remarkable transparency. Affected clients were notified, contracts corrected, and proper commissions restored. Jasmine implemented new verification protocols to prevent similar fraud in the future. 1 month after my return, I received an email from Gregory requesting a meeting. I entered his office, expecting more questions about the investigation. Instead, he offered me the manager position for my team. Your colleagues respect you, he said, and you've demonstrated exactly the integrity and attention to detail we need. I accepted on the spot. That evening, I drove to my mother's house with a bottle of sparkling cider to celebrate. We sat on her porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in triumphant golds and pinks. So Brady is being prosecuted? She asked, sipping her cider. Yes, the evidence was overwhelming. embezzlement and fraud charges. She nodded slowly. And how do you feel about all of it? I considered the question carefully. I don't feel happy about his downfall. That's not why I did this. Why did you do it then? Because systems only work when people speak up, I said. Because what he did wasn't just cruel, it was criminal. And because I finally realized that protecting myself and protecting the company weren't opposing goals. My mother smiled. That's my girl. 6 months later, my mother entered remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. I was promoted again, this time to regional sales director. Brady pled guilty to reduced charges, paying restitution, and serving a short sentence. I heard he moved across the country afterward. Sometimes I think about that performance review, about the moment he danced while I cried. In his arrogance, he never imagined I was anything but a victim. He never saw me as someone capable of meticulous documentation, of connecting complex dots, of standing firm in my truth. That was his final mistake, not seeing me clearly. My name is Lane Winters. I'm a regional sales director who identifies birds by their calls, has one tattoo, and knows that sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't about revenge. It's about bringing truth to light. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Share in the comments about a time you stood up for yourself or others when it would have been easier to walk away. Remember, courage isn't about never feeling fear. It's about facing it and doing what's right anyway. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time.